Welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast, where we explore the powerful journeys of individuals breaking generational patterns and starting new cycles in their lineages. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I am so thrilled to welcome an extraordinary guest who embodies the essence of transformation and conscious evolution. Caroline Gamble is a renowned therapist, healer, and guide who has dedicated her life to helping others reach their highest potential. With a fascinating blend of British and American heritage, Caroline's own journey from the corporate world to becoming a healing practitioner is a testament to the power of following one's true calling. Caroline brings together decades of study in neuroscience, yoga, meditation, and various healing modalities. Her unique approach has attracted clients from major corporations like Microsoft and Thrive Global, and her private practice in Los Angeles maintains a waiting list of those seeking her transformative guidance. In today's episode, we'll explore Caroline's ancestral healing journey, the patterns she's breaking in her own lineage, and how she helps others step into their greatest potential through expanded consciousness. Get ready for a deeply insightful conversation that just might spark your own transformation. Please, if you are enjoying the content here inside the Cycle Starters podcast, like, subscribe, comment, and share this video with your networks. It really helps our channel grow, so thank you in advance for your support. Now sit back, relax, grab a tea, and let's dive in and welcome Caroline. Hello, my dear.
Hello to you. Thrilled to be here. I have my tea. Am I allowed to drink it as we go along?
You are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Do you have a drink?
I do. I have some water, and it is pretty hot out. The weather here is a little funny. It's very humid. It's cloudy. I mean, we're both in LA, but I might be a little bit closer to the beach than you. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where
No,
you're located.
it's blue skies and it feels quite dry where I am.
Okay, well, it is humid here. It is. I'm about a mile and a half from the beach, and I have to close all the windows in my house, when
Wow.
I'm recording. So I'm a little warm. So I have a nice, icy, cold glass of water by my side, and I'm
And
just thrilled to
Your
be here.
skin is glistening and glowing because of all that moisture in the air.
I mean, from your lips to God's ears, I am telling myself every day I'm doing self-hypnosis around to get, younger and hotter and more beautiful each and every day. So thank you.
I can see it. I just saw you last week and you're looking younger, hotter, and more beautiful. So it's working.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to put a pin in hypnosis because I know that that's part of what you do. I know that that's a modality that you work with. So I definitely want to talk about that. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much for saying yes to being on the podcast today. And I'm really excited to be in dialogue with you about healing transformation in general and elevating our consciousness. And I think you have a very cool life story. We're going to talk some astrology too. But where I want to start right now is with your ancestry. So what can you tell us about your ancestral background?
Well, thank you for having me, Heather. And as I recall, I kind of said to you, and you said to me at the same time, let's be on the podcast. Let's have a conversation about life and ancestry and spirituality in the formal context of a podcast. So I'm honored and thrilled to be here. So my ancestry, and you're going to have to guide me into this a little bit because I've done so many different healing modalities and explorations of quantum science and consciousness. And my ancestry, I've never worked with an expert. I've never dove into really pulling that thread. But I know some things. I am half British and half American. My father is Scottish. He was born and raised in Edinburgh, so not rural Scotland. Yet if you know Scots, there's a fieriness to them, which really does feel Highlander. And we would go up to Scotland, and rather than visit the city life or the town life of Scotland, when I was a little child, he was always drawn for us to go into the Highlands. So we'd go up for a week or 2 weeks of the year called Whitsun. And Whitsun was a time where the Scots would play what is called the Highland Games. And so these are men, and there's men. There are women doing other things, but the men are in their kilts and they are showing their strength playing the Highland Games. Things like holding a tree trunk between their hands and hoisting it over their shoulder. And whoever hoists it the furthest wins that game. And then shot put. So really kind of displays of simple sport and strength and fire. The Scots are fiery. And I would see this through my father's temper. He has a temper. And I didn't like, growing up as a kid, I didn't like an unhandled, unmanaged temper. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't raised in Scotland. I was raised in London. But the pull to be close to those roots took me to Edinburgh University. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. It's a beautiful old medieval city that is still very much historic in its architecture and in its energy. And so I went up there and I studied for 4 years. I did a master's in history of art and at the same time a master's in history of architecture. And it was the first time in my life, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I will circle it back, that I actually arrived to a subject that I really was fascinated in studying. So Edinburgh for me, being back in Scotland, was first of all exposure to more Scots. I remember when I first started, because it was just me and my sister and my mother, and we had 2 dogs and my father. So it was very much outweighed to being female in my household. And I remember, my dad doing things and just thinking he was annoying. And then I started, as I got into my 20s and I started dating guys. And in my teens, I was dating guys. But like in the teens, it was more like I was living with the men I was dating. I thought, it's not my father per se. Some of these things I find annoying are just male. And so being in Scotland was it was again similar, like, it's not my father that has a temper, although he does. Part of his lineage has a temper. And I don't know how much of that is associated with the Scottish temper, right? You take from us everything, we will fight you to the end. We will fight you to the end. And so there's a grit to the Scots. And there's a grit to me. And on the other side, my mother is from America. And being raised in London with this gorgeous blonde American mother, she was like classic, an American Betty, and it was quite glamorous having the two. The Scottish father, the blonde American mother. It was quite exotic. It was, this far-flung land of potential that everyone wanted to come to at that time. And yet she is glamorous in a way, but she was born and raised in West Virginia, in the capital city of Charleston. It wasn't rural by any stretch, yet there's something of the hillbilly about her. And so we would go to West Virginia and we'd stay in Charleston, and my family there were, well-to-do, but we'd also go off and we'd do family retreats out in the holler, in the mountain, where we'd be all under the same roof of a big log cabin. And it would be, fire pits and black bears and prints of animals. And it was this display from her of, you don't take any nonsense and you work, you work it out. And so I got grit from both of them in different ways. And there's that part of me that knows that if there was an apocalypse, I would be getting as many kids, first, starting with my 2 kids, onto my back, and I would be hiking out of there. And, the skin of my feet might be peeling off, and I have the grit to just bear it and go through it. And I wonder, how much of that is the Highlander? How much of that is the hillbilly? And so I explore my ancestry in that way.
I love this. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, Did your mother ever do any DNA testing? Like, do you know where your maternal ancestors come from?
So pilgrims from Germany. So we know that Dutch and German.
All right. So you have Scottish blood, Dutch blood, German blood, and your mom was raised in the States
Yes.
in the mountains of West Virginia. I grew up in Northern Virginia, actually.
Oh, it's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
I was born in DC and then grew up in McLean and Arlington and have been to West Virginia a couple of times, and it is gorgeous
Mm-hmm.
there. Very,
It
very,
is.
very beautiful. All right. Well, that is cool. Thank you for sharing some family history with us. Well, so I'm curious, when did the concept of ancestral healing enter your consciousness insofar as when did you have this realization that things can be passed down from generation to generation, but also I have the power to shift these patterns. I have the
Mm-hmm.
power to change these cycles because some people can get stuck in, being focused on the trauma and can almost get into victim space around it. And what I love about these conversations that we have on the podcast is that yes, we acknowledge the trauma, we work through it, we alchemize those wounds, and then we turn those into magic, right? We face forward and we start thinking about, okay, well, what am I creating? What do I want to do for my family and my lineage going forward? What patterns am I going to start? So I know this is long-winded, but when did these concepts sort of enter your consciousness?
Well, that's so beautiful. I love what you just said there. And I'm going to answer that question directly, but it reminds me of the Ming Dynasty ceramics, these exquisite, priceless ceramics that if, there were many of them and life happens, they were in beautiful palaces, yet if one of them was chipped, they didn't discard the chip. They would put it back on with a gold filigree. And the more chips, the more broken the vases were, the more exquisite they would become after being put together with this gold. And you can visualize that. Visualize a really old, beautiful Ming vase. Or if you don't know a Ming vase, a Chinese vase. And it's exquisite. But then imagine it has veins of gold running through it. It becomes something even more exquisite because it has this story of rebirth. And in the work I do with my clients, I think about when we identify something that we were born with rather than we developed. So that ancestral lineage, that epigenetical path, oftentimes we think, well, I want to discard it. I want to get rid of that chip. But actually, can you let the chip drop away and then can you bring it back with a sense of reverence and a sense of it's the full package of me, but let me bring it back through choice and let it become part of the whole that is me. And so, yeah, when you were talking about that, I thought, wow, that is symbolic for me and how the work that I've done personally and the work I do with my clients, that there's no bad part. We are a sum of parts. We are a deck of cards, and there are 52 cards, and thereabouts, we maybe have 48 parts or maybe 54 parts. They're always changing. The number is always changing, but we are not just one. We are a deck of cards and a sum of all these different parts. And there are no bad parts. Even the ones that, if I inherited that temper from my father, that can be placed back surrounded by gold and be part of the beautiful whole if managed correctly. So yes, I remember when I would go and visit my family in the US, there was a lot of alcohol around. My parents didn't drink much. They were very moderate drinkers. And it would be 3 o'clock and my grandmother would be really fidgety, and then four and she's looking, what's the time? 4 o'clock. And then cocktail hour would come and suddenly she'd be happy and she'd be chatty and her whole energy would change. And we'd go out for family brunches and my grandparents can we go? Is it bad form to go to brunch at 11? so that we can have that drink. And they would be excited about Sunday because they could start drinking earlier. And then everybody had apartments in the same apartment block. And I just remember my aunts and uncles and then the generation above, they'd be just walking from one apartment to the next and down to the pool and down to the beach. And they'd all have a huge cup filled with ice. And I would think it was a Coke or I don't know, 7 Up. And I'd go and try to have a drink. No, you can't have that. And it would be alcohol. It would be heavily spirited. And so from seeing that and from seeing body language changing when drinks became involved and seeing my parents, not be critical at all, but just be observational around alcoholism and how alcoholism is inherited. There's a thread of alcoholism that runs through the American side of my family. I was exposed to that and communicated about that from a young age. And then when I was older and a little bit more mature, maybe when I was in my early teens, I was curious about my biological grandfather, my mother's grandfather. He died. I met him a few times and he seemed nice, but my mother would always talk about how wonderful he was. And I was like, he seemed kind of vacant. He seemed unavailable to me. And he was suffering as an alcoholic and he shot himself. That's how he died. And so I heard about that. And then I'd see my aunt who had a very turbulent life. My mother saw the dysfunction and she regulated herself. She made sure she was fully functional. She didn't drink too much. She drank in moderation. She had a really good family who had a wholesome dinner every night around the table. She course corrected by seeing the dysfunction. My aunt, on the other hand, went crazy. That thread that ran into her, maybe it bypassed my mother, but it certainly ran into her. And she had a very sad story of falling pregnant at the age of 15, flying off to the other side of the country to give up the baby for adoption, trying to keep it, then gave it up at this young age on her own without anyone to support her. And then she could never have a baby again. And so she did a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol. And she was so much fun to be around with at times. She had a mean streak and the alcohol would bring it out. So my mother eventually said, okay, so much dysfunction. We will go in with love once in a while, but we're going to have space from this group. And so that's when I started seeing, okay, so I've inherited some things. And after hearing that, I got curious about looking at my father's family and seeing my aunts, his two sisters, they also displayed a temper. And my father displays a temper. And then, my father never talks about his childhood. And when he does, it's kind of, all kind of painted over and positive. But you scratch the surface and you hear that actually there were lots of tempers when he was a kid. And so I started thinking, do I have a temper? Am I naturing this? Is there nature with me to have a temper? Or am I seeing his temper? I started getting curious about, okay, what am I seeing that I'm bringing in and normalizing versus what is just through me? And I started exploring, even just at a young age. I looked at the symbolism of the prayer gesture. And it's so powerful. When I work with my clients, we always look at this. And, all religions and all spiritualities and beliefs are welcome in the work I do. It doesn't help and it doesn't hinder any of the work that I do. But know this, what we are praying to two parts of the individual, not the individual with the esoteric. The two parts of the individual, may they come together and know each other in this lifetime. That is what we're praying to in all religions, all spiritualities. When this symbolism comes out, we're praying to the duality of each of us. And the duality is, there's Caroline that has a story, there's Heather that has a story, right? The first thing we know about our stories is name, Caroline, name Heather, female, ethnicity, background, age. The story is changeable. Every part of our story is limited by the circumstance of our life. And so this story is changeable because if you took the embryo, we know we can do this with IVF. If we take the embryo that came through your mother's womb or my mother's womb, that is you and I, genetically, and we put that embryo in a womb in a far-flung country, let's say in a peasant womb in Russia or an Aborigine womb in Australia, and that baby was born and it looks like us 40 plus years later, these variations look like us more or less. There'll be some changes, some subtle changes, but the story is different. And the story informs the personality, and that then informs our personal reality. So this is just one half of who we are. And most people live their whole lifetime just focused on this. They aren't even connected with what's going on here. They're lost in the story. They're not even aware they're in it. And the other half is so exquisitely beautiful and so vast. If this is limited and changeable, you can change any part of the story. Any part of your story you can change. This part is limitless and unchangeable. It's your soul. And so if you imagine those three variations of us, right? The ones we are today, the one that was born through the Russian peasant womb, the one that was born in Australia into an Aborigines womb, and 40 plus years later, the three of you come in a room together, the stories would be different. That would be different. Your personalities would be different, and you would have created a different personal reality of your life. But this part would be the same. Wow. And so if you imagine those three variants of you, what is the common thread that runs through all of them? That's how we start to explore our soul's territory. What is the thing within us that is unchangeable? If we are given everything, if everything is taken away from us, this part is unchangeable. If we lose our arms and legs, if we lose our sight and our hearing, this part of you remains constant, unchangeable by the story. And so when we pray, we come into the hope, allow me in this lifetime. I pray that they know each other. In fact, I pray that they merge, they lean into each other, they become one form. And that is how I live my life, with them as one form. And so when I started to understand ancestry, and I was really young when I woke up to this, and I started seeing that there was a story that was being programmed around me, and I was both allowing it, I was both aware of it, and it was also happening without any of my awareness. But I knew that there was a creation here, as I knew my dad's rage that he seemed unable to control. That's just part of his story. And so I'd see, wow, there's your story. There's your story, my loved one. I can see your story and I can see your soul. And so I started exploring, okay, alcoholism, that would certainly be part of my story because it's in the lineage. Is it part of my soul? No. My soul really loves purity. My soul really loves calm. And so the soul and the story, they're not going to be aligned with that. So let's make sure that my story and my soul come together. And so I stopped drinking alcohol when I was 26, not because I was an alcoholic. I always was a moderate drinker, but I thought, I know where that could take me if I'm not completely switched on. And I don't really value it because leaning into my soul, I saw my soul really values something other than that. My soul values not leaning on crutches, not leaning on compulsions. My story certainly has compulsions, but my soul is very pure in that way. So that was one useful example. There were many, many earlier decisions of course corrections in my path. But that's a good one to use because everybody has a story with alcohol. And most people who stop drinking because they're alcoholics. But that was not my story. It was just a very conscious choice of, I'm going to absolutely turn to my soul for this one.
Oh, my goodness. I love how you're giving us a peek into your practice and how you work with clients and really elevate their consciousness to be relating to their soul. What's their soul's journey? What's their soul's mission? I think this is so beautiful. I love what you're sharing. Well, I want to know, how did you even get to this place where you have this practice? You're a therapist, you work with these different modalities. I mentioned RTT. Tell us, what's your journey been like? How did you get to this place where you're holding space for others and really supporting them with their spiritual transformations?
Wow. RTT is rapid transformational therapy, and I'm going to tell you all about it. But one of the starting points was Oprah. Remember, American mother, born and raised in London. So we would connect with the US culture. I'd come home from school and we'd have a big bowl of pasta as an after school snack with roasted tomatoes and goat's cheese and some olives thrown in there. It was delicious. And we'd sit and we'd watch an Oprah show. And I remember one show, so many struck me for different reasons, but this really struck me because she had a panel of maybe 5 different women. And all these women were all living what I saw to be their best life, something that I wanted for myself. Because they were independent, they were doing something that they loved doing, and they were being recognized for it. And the overall message was everybody had different paths to find their thing. But the overall message was really focused on women. Find what you love doing and then find a way of being paid to do it. And I thought, amazing. It planted a seed. Now, the seed did not grow immediately because I was probably 16, maybe 18 when I watched that. And I graduated and went into advertising. I got a graduate recruitment spot at a really great global agency. Everybody thought that was like, well done, you. And I spent 5 years there just thinking, when am I going to start enjoying this? And then I realized I'm not, because I'm not doing what I love. Now, many people can do well in their job and that's enough for them. I would challenge them, because I think that one of the key things I work with all my clients on, I think that aligned with purpose. And that is not necessarily that you are living your purpose today, but you are exploring what it is and you're moving in that direction. That is so soothing for the soul and the story coming together. It's soothing for your nervous system. So just exploring, you don't have to have found it yet, but as long as every day you're exploring it in reflection, in contemplation, and you're moving towards it by reading something, listening to a podcast, or just having a few words exchanged with another about that thing that is your purpose area. So for me, what I then set myself when I was in advertising, I thought, okay, find your purpose, master your purpose, share your purpose. That's what you need to do, Caroline. You need to find your purpose. You need to master your purpose, and then you need to share your purpose. And so, having been inspired by that Oprah show, I had been saving up enough money to self-support myself for a year. Remember, I was working in advertising. I wasn't earning a whole lot, but I saved. I self-supported myself for a year, and I decided, okay, I'm really going to see what I love doing. What I would do, because her message was, find out what you love doing, the things you do without even being paid to do it, and then get paid to do it. So I thought, okay, self-funded, I'm just going to do things that I love doing. And it was very clear what I loved spending my time doing. I love spending my time doing yoga every day. I would go to classes, but very quickly I started doing my self-practice at home, studying the classical texts of yoga, deep dives into that. Before long, I've been doing yoga for some years, and I've been studying yoga for some years. But during that year off, very quickly, I was doing a 3-hour yoga practice every morning. And I'm not talking vinyasa. This is not exercise addiction. This is sitting down, being still, and going inwards with breath, with meditation, with some principles of yoga philosophy, and also moving prana through my body with yoga asana movement. So I do yoga every day, a deep class, and I'd study the classical texts of yoga every day. I'd also started studying neuroscience and psychology. I was fascinated. I was insatiable. I couldn't get enough of it. This was before the time of master classes, but there were TED Talks, and there were lots of TED Talks on psychology. And so I was absorbed by it. So I started studying that. I started studying nutrition, and I would always make food for myself every day, beautiful food. I have had a history with food restriction and food binging. But in a year where I could self-support and I just had peace in my system, I'd make beautiful, nutritious foods. I'd study nutrition. I'd start to make food for other people. So I thought, okay, yoga, neuroscience, psychology, nutrition. And then another thing that I did every day without fail, I would seek out people to have a deep and meaningful conversation with, like not the bullshit, not the how's your day doing, you know, what I would find people, whether it be walking to the grocery store or walking through a park, or people that I already knew who could go deep. And I'd ask them a question, or, you know, I just could see that they would be receptive. They were willing to go deep. And I'd have these profound conversations where I was able to be in a position of guide, where I was able to draw on what I'd been studying and learning in classical yoga, neuroscience and psychology, and biochemical nutrition. And I just realized I have no judgment. I really don't. I can have anything that anyone else has done. I've either done it or I've thought about doing it. And if I haven't thought about doing it, it's just because the circumstances in my life haven't led to me thinking about doing it. My point is, I have no judgment about what people have done. And so I was therefore really open, and people would reveal, people would say to me all the time, my God, I'm telling you things that I've never even admitted to myself. I can't say this to my spouse. And so I thought it was very clear to me that I wanted to create a career, not just in one of those things, but in all of those things. And so I started just ticking off, studying courses, certificates, accreditations. And I started working as a yoga teacher. And very quickly, I had people asking me, will you be my private teacher? And so I'd go over to their house, I'd schedule a 90-minute session, and I'd be there for 2 hours, because the first 60 minutes, they just want to hear the yoga philosophy or the neuroscience or the psychology or the biochemistry. They'd want to hear that. They would want to share their problems with me. And I thought, wow, what we're doing here is we are looking for an insight. We're looking for something together. This was so collaborative. And I was working with 20 private clients in London, and then groups of clients as well. And again, the same thing would happen with the groups of clients. I remember I would usually come to the yoga studio 10 minutes before my class time, and there would be a gathering. So I would have to come 30 minutes before my class time, and then 45 minutes before my class time, because people wanted to find an insight that they could then take on to the mat and breathe out of themselves and move out of themselves. And I was able to hold lots of different people in the group class. I could hold a group class that would release whatever, someone with, exercise addiction coming to a yoga class, someone who is binging themselves on sugar every day, someone who had trauma from childhood abuse, whatever it was, I would be able to hold a space for transformation for groups. And then the one-on-one was just incredibly powerful. So I started teaching 2-hour or 2.5-hour sessions. And the first half would be about this, what I started calling insight dialogue. So we're looking for the thing that is blocking them from living their most expanded life. And then when they have that thing, when it's clarified, aha, yes, I see. I'm the afraid child. I'm the child who is afraid of the dad who was dominant. And now I feel like I don't have strength in my system. And so, okay, how can we now move that through you? How can we hold that for long enough and breathe with a balancing, calming breath that shifts your nervous system? How can we allow that thing that has created so much stress in you, hold it in your psyche, hold it in your consciousness, but rather than holding it with a stressed breath and a stressed nervous system and a stress biofeedback through your brain that will make you continue to cling on to it, how can you hold it in your awareness and calm and completely relax your nervous system, your body, your energy? And let's see whether that's going to untether it. And it would untether things over and over again. My client would then come to me the next week and say, that stuff is gone. It's gone. I haven't felt it. Let's move on to this one. And we would start ticking it off. And so that's really the genesis of how it all came about. I then moved to Asia. I continued the same model of doing sessions split between insight dialogue, looking for the thing, looking for the block, and then movement and breath and meditation to shift you away from attachment to the block into transformation. I did that through my time in Asia as well. And then by the time I got landed in LA 5 years ago, the power really then for me was insight dialogue. So we're looking for the insight, and then we're just allowing you to even remove the distraction of the movement. You can even untether from the story by getting still. So untethering, because your body, your attachment to how you move, your posture, how you move between the yoga postures is still part of your story. So let's get you even removed from that. Let's get you still. So you can't as easily hop into the habits of your conditioning. Let's get you still. Let's use cranial sacral release, breath, other yoga practices that are more subtle. Let's use guided bespoke meditation, something called yoga nidra, which is the sleep of yoga of the mind, so that you fully let go of the story for enough moments. And actually, I hold them in that space for minutes on end, so that you can actually go in with the insight dialogue and then completely let it go. We hold you in that space of having completely detached of your attachment from that block for long enough, and it's just looser. And you wake up and you get off the table with it being less gripping, less attached to your system, or gone. And then I upgraded that system. I'm coming to an end, Heather, you'll be happy to know. I upgraded that by adding hypnotherapy, which was just the icing on the cake. So if I'm trying to get my clients into a space of expanded consciousness after they've seen the things that have been blocking them, then they go into expanded consciousness. They use hypnosis to move out of the beta brainwave state, which is that I must attach to the story to be safe, into alpha and theta brainwave states where suddenly you're not even aware of the story. Then there was just 10x transformation.
My goodness, what a journey you have been on. And I love how you work with a mix of modalities, that your work is so layered and so, so powerful. And just your energy. You just have this bright, shiny energy, but a lot of power is coming through you as well. So this is so cool. I know that anybody who gets a chance to work with you has a really, really wonderful, profound healing experience. I mean, I can feel it. It definitely comes through. Well, so
We let me just say, we
yeah,
co-create it very much. My clients and I co-create it. And if you are ready to co-create, then the transformation can be so quick and so vast.
I love that. And thank you for bringing that up. Even in my own practice, it is a co-creation. Like, you have to be an active participant in your healing for sure.
Mm.
Right. And I've had to learn the hard way that not everybody came into this life to do healing work. Not everybody is going to do ancestral healing
Mm.
in this lifetime. We can't judge that, right? Because we don't know what soul contracts they signed, on the other side. But yeah, you have to be an active participant in your healing. You have to be willing, and you have to want to transform. And not everybody does. So, yeah, I think that's an important point, and thank you for bringing that up. Well, so can we talk a little bit about hypnotherapy
Mm.
and why it's so effective? And you went into it a bit, but I'm just so obsessed with learning more about RTT, because when we met, you said, I use this modality called RTT. And I was like, wait a minute, I've heard of that before. And then you asked me, oh, have you heard of Marissa Peer? And I was like, yes, okay, that's why I know of this. So for those listeners and viewers out there who aren't aware of how hypnotherapy can really help somebody in terms of transformation and healing, what would you tell them? Just like, how does it work and why do you love it?
I've loved hypnotherapy for a long time. And RTT is something a little bit different. It includes hypnotherapy, but it's much bigger than that. So Marissa Peer, she's an amazing woman. She trained as a hypnotherapist with the world's great trainers and experts in hypnotherapy. And she used it with clients. She's been doing this for 35 years. And what she loved is that it was so quick. It was transformative. She was frustrated with the psychiatry or psychotherapy model where the client would come in and talk about their background and talk about their history and talk about their trauma. And she was frustrated thinking, week after week, you go in and you're suffering. If you go to see a doctor with a broken leg, he doesn't say, well, let's get to know each other, first of all. And then next week, I'll start to apply some light pressure to your leg. And then maybe 12 months down the line, we'll sort out the pain. She wants to extract the pain in the first session. And so she has spent 35 years developing something called RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy. And I'm training in it at the moment. So I use it with my clients. I'm already trained as a hypnotherapist, but this takes it even further. And so in a session, which can be 1.5 to 2 hours, a client comes in with a presenting problem. What the modality does, and I'm now doing with my clients and getting the full training in, is you become, first of all, like a detective. So you're exploring. A client comes in with a presenting problem of OCD. I can't go to sleep at night until I've checked every window and every door 50 times. And then I wake myself up and check them again and check them again. For example, that's the presenting problem. They're suffering with sleep. They're feeling very anxious. They're nervous about people breaking in. They have that OCD around the security in their home. That's the presenting problem. So you become like a great detective. You start to explore, we regress them into, when did this first come about? This feeling that you needed to control, this feeling that you were unsafe. So you're starting to be a great detective to really explore it. This is all in a 90-minute to 2-hour session. And then after exploring, really having that detective work, imagine a detective, they've got all these different images, they're trying to get all the data points, trying to pull this picture together. You then become like a dentist. You extract the toxic, the negative thinking, the negative limiting beliefs. We extract all of that. And then you become like a coder and you recode something in that is going to take the client to the better life that they want. And usually, she is such a master that she can do this in a single session. And actually, all RTT therapists, the program and methodology is so powerful that we are getting amazing results. Me using it in one session. Sometimes you need as many as 3, but it's not every week for years. It's a different, very rapid transformational therapy. And at the heart of it is hypnotherapy, although there are many other tools that are used. And hypnotherapy and self-hypnosis is so powerful. And how many of your viewers watch this versus listen to this? Well, in fact, I can do
I think
both.
everybody watches
Okay.
pretty
So
much.
even if you're listening now, you mustn't do this if you're listening to this while operating machinery or driving a car. Do not do that. But if you can be still, seated in a safe space, I can guide you, whether you're looking at me or whether you're just hearing me, into self-hypnosis. And then I'll explain a little bit about why it's powerful to do this. So let's all do it now.
Great.
So self-hypnosis, you keep your head in the same position and you look up towards your eyebrows. So everybody, keep your head, don't lift your chin, but keep your head in the same position and look up towards your eyebrows. And you want to look up towards your eyebrows so that you feel a strain in your eyes and you maybe see the little shadow of your eyebrows. Now, the key thing here to do is maintain that strain, that looking up, and just come into a soft belly breath. So we don't want to be concentrating so hard that the breath is stopping. We want the breath to be slow and flowing and light. And you'll feel your eyes start to twitch and flicker. And that's hypnosis coming onto you. And let them do that. Keep your eyes open. Just as you continue your soft belly breathing, the eyes flickering, that's a really good sign. And then keep looking up, but slowly feel the eyes getting eyelid. Keep looking up as the eyelids then close completely. Keep looking up. And any little flickering, this kind of electric flickering, is you going in to hypnosis. Okay, so open your eyes. That's how you get into hypnosis. Now, with a client, I would keep them in that state. Your eyes then will naturally go wherever they want to go. Doesn't matter. You're still in a hypnotic state. Hypnotic state is the state between wakefulness and sleep. It's called the hypnagogic state. And it's also between beta brain waves and the delta brain waves of deep sleep, which is where we have alpha brain waves, where you're starting to get calmer in your mind, and then theta brain waves, where you're starting to get really receptive to transformation. Because what's happening is the brain is loosening and relaxing its neural pathways. And you are shifting away from this beta brain waves, the known self. When our beta brain waves are moving so quickly, the beta brain waves are fast, they are only moving at a speed which allows them to stay in the grip of learned information. Okay, so when our eyes are opening and we're processing and looking around, we're processing from a position with beta brain waves, which is we are learning, we are understanding our environment from all that we have seen in this lifetime. Okay, limited consciousness, beta brain waves. When we go into REM, rapid eye movement, by lifting the eyes up and then keeping the eyes up as we close the eyes down, we get this huge surge of alpha brain waves into theta brain waves, which untethers us from this limited information set, this limited consciousness, boom, into expanded consciousness, where we're very receptive to change, where we're very receptive to see ourselves from a different angle, in a different way, where we're able to go, whoa, yeah, I've been telling myself that story, but now I'm hearing this story. And at that point with our clients, when they're in the state of hypnosis, you've done all that detective work. Now you're in extraction work. So now we're extracting, we're pulling out what we don't want you to think, and we're reframing it, recoding it with thoughts that are more aligned, that are free thoughts, thoughts that give you freedom rather than keep you blocked and suffering. And so it's absolutely exquisite as a methodology. I'm now, as I said, I'm training in it. I'm already using it with my clients on top of all the other things that I use. And I'm so excited about it because I think with those clients that come in and they don't have an appetite for long courses of spiritual work, they want a one and done. RTT is so amazing for that. And then for my clients who want to continue constant expansion, and they are beautiful clients to work with, I can use rapid transformational therapy to just further and more quickly, just loosen that grip of whatever the presenting problem is so that they're relieved of it.
Thank you for sharing all of this. I am so fascinated by the different brainwave states. I mean, everything you're saying to me is so interesting. And I've been experimenting with some self hypnosis recently. So, yeah, I'm just like a sponge for all
How
of this.
How did you feel when I guided you? Did you feel the flickering in your eyes?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's
For
beautiful.
sure.
And it can become so addictive. So if you want to code something into your brain, like I'm going to be someone who chooses to drink water rather than who drinks a Coke. I'm sure your audience are people who are already on that health journey, or someone who checks their finances rather than avoids looking at their finances. If you want to code that into you, you just go through those steps. First of all, you decide, how do I want to reframe this? Okay, I realize I'm an avoidant. I'm avoiding looking at my finances. I procrastinate around anything to do with finances. I avoid it. Okay, I want to be, but that's holding me back because I feel ashamed I feel afraid and I feel, I feel less than. I want to update. I want to upgrade myself. I want to transform to someone who feels so much pleasure and safety and in control of their finances that I'm checking that stuff out daily, weekly. Then you tell yourself that new message you want. You go through those steps of self-hypnosis where you look up, you hold the gaze up with a little bit of a strain, you feel the flickering in, you keep your eyes up as you close your eyes down, and then you think, yeah, I'm someone who I love looking at my finances. I love feeling on top of this. I love having a filing system. I love highlighting. I love knowing my bank balance. I love knowing my monthly income and outgoings. I love that. It makes me feel so powerful. And so you use self-hypnosis can be just daily transformation rather than waiting for your work with a healer.
Love this. I'm going to have you back on for another episode so we
We're
can
out
talk
of time.
more.
We're out
I
of time.
know. Well, I promised that we were going to talk a little astrology. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with my work, in addition to hosting this podcast on YouTube, I have a monthly membership called the Ancestral Healing Collective. And it's a sacred space that I've created for female bodied cycle breakers and cycle starters to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, embodied joy, and spiritual gifts with astrology and pleasure as transformative medicine. So each month we have a new moon pleasure practice and dance party. And then I also have a guest expert led workshop. So members get access to those events, and then they also get access to our growing resource library of guest expert led workshops. And I think there are about 25 workshops in the library right now. So I want to talk a little astrology because our viewers, our community, they love astrology. And I want to see if you feel comfortable sharing your sun, moon, and rising signs
Yes,
with our
anything.
community.
Anything. I feel comfortable sharing really anything.
Well, I love that. Thank you for being an open book. All right. So I know that you are an Aries sun, you
Mm-hmm.
are a Scorpio rising, and a Sagittarius moon. So you're very fiery. So your sun, moon, your rising sign, they make up your big three. So they have the most influence on your energy. And so, I
So
mean,
I'm Aries rising.
you're an Aries sun. So that's where the sun was the day that you were born.
Okay.
Aries season had just started. Like the spring equinox was just a few days before your birthday. My birthday is March 23rd. So we're both Aries suns. And so the sun is where you shine, okay? It is your creative energy, it's your life force energy, it's the special sauce that you mix into everything you do that makes you stand out from the 11 other astrological signs. So it's how you see yourself, right? And so you are a natural born leader, right? You like to initiate things. You are passionate. You are fearless, right? You're like, oh, no one's gone there. No one knows what that's all about. I'll go. I'll be the first one, right? That comes naturally to you. Not surprising at all. But I love how you are a Scorpio rising. So your rising sign is the vehicle for your divine mission. It's your perception of reality. So it's the lens that you see everything through. And it's also the energies that people pick up on when they first meet you. So this is why we always ask for a birth time when we're doing a natal chart reading. It's because the rising sign changes often throughout the day. So Scorpio is fixed water. Water is our emotions, our feelings, our sentiments. And when we have a sign that is in a fixed modality, it means it's the most stable expression of that element. And so for me, Scorpio is deep emotional sensitivity balanced with logic in its highest expression. So all of the water signs are extremely intuitive and psychic. And I love that you are a therapist because folks with a strong Scorpio presence in their chart, it's like they were born with a PhD in psychology. Like they came out of the womb with this understanding of the human psyche. And you are living this out. And the special sauce for Scorpio is that they are able to go deep better than any other sign, to the point where they can actually get frustrated with other people that aren't as willing to go to the depths of things, right? Scorpio energy is very much about the truth. They are the attentive detective. So, one story I like to tell is that you can think of somebody in their kitchen and they're starting to smell something bad, like something's rotting in the kitchen. The person with the Scorpio energy will put on the hazmat suit, they will tear up the floorboards, and they will go down into the foundation of the house with the flashlight and find out what it is. They don't care how dirty it is, how offensive it is, how, unpleasant it is. They are obsessed with knowing the truth and getting to the bottom of things. And it's also the sign that I associate with deep transformation. And you are doing this. You are so embodying your rising sign. Does this resonate for you?
I mean, wow, I've
I know.
never had this information. I mean, I knew I was an Aries, but the Scorpio rising, that is fascinating. The things you were describing about a Scorpio, is that specific to Scorpio rising? My son is a Scorpio. So I'm wondering, if is he also going to be the one that wants to have the deep conversations?
Likely. I mean, if he's a Scorpio sun, that's where he shines. So, yes, he has that ability to go deep, right? He may not see himself, he may not like be that way in his everyday life, but when there's an opportunity to go deep, he will shine in that realm. Yeah,
That's going to be fun. I'm going
I
to enjoy that.
know. Well, I love all of my Scorpio friends. I actually have a lot of Scorpio friends because no subject is taboo, right? There's no
Yeah.
subject that's off the table. We can talk about anything.
Yeah.
And they have this dark sense of humor where we can just joke about the most just horrible things. And then we can come back and we're laughing. That's also part of my Gemini rising. I'm able to like play with ideas, but I really appreciate the fact that these folks with a strong Scorpio presence, they can go there.
Mm.
Right? Like, yeah, let's go there. Let's talk about this thing. So I appreciate that. We can talk about anything. And even when we were prepping for this interview, you said, "Heather, I am an open book. I'll talk about anything." So it's very, very Scorpio.
Wow, I learned
Yeah.
something new this past hour. Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like I said, all the water signs, they're very psychic, they're very intuitive. You are obviously very, very psychic, very intuitive, and you're living out your mission in the world to hold space for deep transformation. I mean, I
Mm.
love it. I think that's so cool. So, I do want to talk about the Sagittarius moon, though. I think you're the second person this month that has a Sagittarius moon. So, Sagittarius, like Aries, is also a fire sign, but
Mm.
it's different insofar as Aries is cardinal fire, which means it's initiating fire.
Mm-hmm.
Sagittarius is mutable fire. So that means it's changeable, it's adaptable, it's flexible. So the element of fire speaks to our passions and the creative spark and our intuition and inspiration. And I was just talking to somebody this morning about this. So, fire is very useful when we're camping, when we're cooking, right? We can warm our hands by a fire, by a fire pit, by a campfire. We can toast some marshmallows on a campfire. But also, fire can burn a house down. Fire can burn a forest down. And so, your moon speaks to your emotional core, your emotional inheritance, including ancestral wounds, but also the gifts that your ancestors have given you. And then on top of that, our moon placement empowers us. It tells us what we are responsible for giving to ourselves in order to feel at home and safe and centered in our own energy.
Mm.
So, what this says to me about you on an emotional level, and then, I want to hear from you if any of this lands, is that Sagittarius is the explorer. Sagittarius, in its highest expression, is the spiritual teacher. They're adventurous. They're into expansion, and they're definitely into travel, but not just, long distance travel. It's journeys of the mind, journeys of consciousness. And so for you emotionally, what this says is that, having adventures, movement, exploring, that actually feeds you. That feeds
Mm.
you emotionally. You can get bored easily.
That's not why I'm leaning off screen.
No,
I want
no.
to hear every word you have to say.
But also, what you were saying about your dad's temper, Sagittarius moon, you have the capacity to burn the house down with your temper. That's not you consistently, but you feel your emotions, right? You have emotions,
Mm,
strong
mm, mm.
emotions, right? So it can be kind of up and down. So tell me, how do you take care of your emotional life with this Sagittarius moon? Because you can be fiery from what I can see, but what is landing with you about
Mm.
all of this?
Well, I mean, fascinating. I really hope my mother got it right with my birth time, because
Yeah.
I think that this is really, really incredible. Yeah. So, well, certainly the Scorpio rising, everything you said about that absolutely landed. I've got a PhD in psychology. Does that mean I can put PhD behind my name without doing 10 years of study? The Sagittarius, yeah, so it's interesting. I have passion, absolutely. It's a passion, though, that I believe is channeled for the greater good. I don't just lose it because I feel rageful. I hold myself and others to high regard. And that can be challenging when I'm parenting little kids who are rising, because I need to remember that they are age appropriate, and I am raising very mindful, wonderful children. But sometimes it's like, okay, we're in a collective here. Let's all upgrade ourselves so that we protect the energy of the collective. Has served me well as a mother, but I'm always trying to find the balance. Okay, I don't want to push them too hard in this area. And so that can be times when it maybe becomes untethered. And interestingly, so I divorced my children's father, my ex-husband, because he's an Aquarius sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were saying the Scorpio rising, there's this frustration when people who can't go deep. He
Yes.
has no interest in going deep.
Well, then, yeah.
He doesn't value going deep. He doesn't have an interest. And I'm insatiable around going deep. For me, depth is the fiber of love. That's the
Mhm.
glue of connectivity. That's what I am. That's my purpose in life. Go deep or go home with me. In fact, go deep or go home not with me. And so we now have a great relationship, because the stress of me not getting that need met has gone since we've divorced the title of husband and wife, when now we've rebranded as life partners. And it's just, this is what we were meant to be all along. We were meant to be beautiful life partners who can just have space from each other, because the headline is, I'm overwhelming for him and
Yeah.
he's underwhelming for me. And that's just because we have different. Now I'm seeing, wow, Scorpio rising. Yes, I will quickly feel like my needs aren't being met if my others aren't able to hold themselves to account, take responsibility, transform, and evolve.
Yes.
And so I feel like then maybe moving to Sagittarius, how do I manage that fire, that changeable, adaptable fire? Well, I managed that by realizing I needed to divorce that title of husband and wife. I needed to rebrand and morph it into something that would really suit me and something that really suits him, because he doesn't want to be overwhelmed and I don't want to be underwhelmed. And so now it's just very peaceful and joyful. Otherwise, I just am really good at looking after my self-care. Yesterday morning, I had 4 hours of self-care on a Thursday morning. Had a really busy start to the week, and I thought, I'm going to luxuriate in self-care. We lost my kids' community and a home in Palisades with the fires. My kids were schooling in COVID. I got divorced. A lot of people will see this part of my story. I've taken it all in a kind of flow state. But a lot of people will say to me, my God, you need to go away on your own for a week and really like recharge. And I think that doesn't interest me. What interests me and what I've done for now 20 years is gone on daily retreat. Every morning for my first hour, I'm on retreat. Don't speak to anyone. My kids know that if they happen to wake up and I'm in a certain position in a certain space in my house doing something silently, if they can hear me breathing in a certain way, just give me some space. Don't come up to me. It will end and I'll be absolutely available to you. I'll give you everything. But for that hour, I need my solitude. And then I have that at the end of the day as well, a solid hour of complete solitude where I go into expanded states of consciousness and I see the story that is holding me back, right? Just the same work I do with my clients, I'm always exploring, like, where are my limitations? Where am I being tripped up by my story? How can I go into an expanded consciousness state so that I can go beyond that for some moments? And I find real reprieve, very much a soothing state. I find equilibrium there. Not necessarily balance. I don't need to balance two things. One's got to go down to the other one's got to go up. Instead, it's like, let's just allow them to equalize. Let's find an equilibrium between them. How do they both stay and find their equilibrium, their harmony, That's the word. And so, yeah, I harmonize my system really actively. I prioritize that. It now just is not something that I think about doing. It's just how I live. And I love it when people start to lean into finding their own practices, because your practice should not look like anyone else's practice. We can be inspired by other people's, but whatever makes you feel harmony in mind and body, whatever allows you to start to get curious and expanded beyond the story, there's your practice.
I love it. Wise words from an evolved Sagittarius moon. I love it. Very cool. Well, so I have one question for you that I ask all of my podcast guests. So, what are the cycles that you are starting in your lifetime for your lineages?
The cycles I'm starting, God, what a beautiful question. I think about that. I think about that a lot. And I'm proud of them, actually. I really feel in purpose I feel like I'm awake to them. The cycle really is radical honesty, radical responsibility, choosing daily and choosing wisely. And the radical honesty is being honest with yourself and honest with those around you. The radical responsibility is taking radical responsibility for your life. Whatever thing has happened, it's your responsibility. You choose. And I know trauma. I know trauma. I am responsible for how it affects my life today and going forward. And so radical responsibility. I'm raising children who are radically honest, who are radically responsible. I'm in a partnership with an amazing man, highly evolved man, who is radically honest and radically responsible. And we are in this beautiful relationship where we are becoming masters of that together by learning from each other. And then the choosing wisely and the choosing daily really came about when I shifted from the marriage to wanting to just thinking, if I'm going to welcome another partner into my life, I want to choose wisely. And when I got married, when I met my ex-husband, my now life partner, we were 25 and 26. We knew we had a connection that was going to last a lifetime, but with the naivety of being so young, we weren't wise at the time. Had we had amazing teachers around us and people who were more evolved, they might have been able to give us sage counsel. And I love this about the Jewish tradition, because they are having sage counsel before before they're, getting married. We didn't have any of that. And so we thought, okay, there's a familiarity here, there's a love here, there's a feeling that we're meant to be together in this lifetime. That must be husband and wife. And so we got married, and now we realize, okay, choosing wisely to me is know your story. Know the social conventions that you feel like you need to live through. Know yourself. And so choose wisely. Choose your partner wisely, choose your vocation wisely, choose your habits throughout your day wisely, choose from the position of wisdom of self. And then choose daily really is about transformation. So living by a principle whereby when someone that you love comes into the room, into the kitchen in the morning, you see them with fresh eyes. You see them for the potential that they could have evolved overnight. They could have woken up in the middle of the night and decided that they were going to be a better version of themselves today. And if they come into the kitchen and you judge them and you treat them as if they were of yesterday, we dilute their transformative energy. Can we see ourselves and see other and choose to see them fresh eyes daily? And so in my partnership with my sacred one now, we don't need to have a legal commitment. Choose wisely, and we choose each other daily. And I'm choosing everything I want daily. Do I want to eat a high protein diet today? Well, I might have yesterday. But if I decide I should do that today because that's my story and my identity, I lose my transformation. So radical honesty, radical responsibility, choose daily and choose wisely.
Beautiful. Caroline, this has been a lovely, lovely conversation. Thank you so much. If folks want to learn more about you or how to work with you, where should they go to learn more?
So you can go to carolinegamble.com, my name.com. Now, let me warn you, in 2025, it's a little bit out of date, but you get the gist of the work that I do, and you can absolutely find me, my email address, through that. And then I also have an Instagram account, MS Caroline Gamble, which I'm going to get more creative. I'm leaning into that. I'm
Wonderful.
choosing daily to be maybe a little bit better or a little bit more, creative on Instagram.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, so we will put those links in the show notes. This has been absolutely fabulous. Thank you for saying yes to being a guest on the podcast today. This has been absolutely delightful. Yeah, this has been wonderful. So thank you.
It's been amazing for me. I'm so glad you're doing this beautiful work. I want to know more about your collective. It sounds exquisite, Heather. And I'm so
Thank you.
thrilled that we are in each other's lives.
Yes, right back at you. I feel the same way. And, I have a feeling that there's more to come.
Mm.
So, everyone, thank you so much. We will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.